Hi everybody, Golden Era Bookworm here, and today we continue with the interview series with Jerry Brainum, and together we discuss the history of steroids, starting with Professor Brown-Séquard's early experiments, the eventual synthesis of testosterone, and the first use of anabolic steroids in the 1950s by bodybuilders. If you don't know the history of steroids and its introduction into the iron game, you are going to love this interview. Enjoy.
Well, seeing that we're on the topic, I'd like to talk more about the history of steroids. We kind of touched on the topic the last time we spoke.
Yeah.
I guess one could start off with the synthesis of testosterone.
Sure.
That was in the mid-1930s.
Yeah. Well, you can go way back, but there was a guy named I can't remember his name exactly. But he was a professor, and he had this idea. What he did is he injected.
Yeah.
He ground up, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was monkey testicles or something, and he I can't help laughing. Brown-Séquard, his name was.
Séquard.
Yeah. He injected himself with monkey testicles, right? He didn't know what was in it. Remember, this is before testosterone was discovered. All he knew was that he claimed tremendous invigorating effect. He was an older guy. He said he felt like he was 23, and he did some crazy things. In one scientific presentation in front of a group of doctors and researchers, he wanted to illustrate how well his penis was working. So he dropped his pants. He wanted to show that his urinary stream had gotten so much stronger from the monkey testicle shot that he lowered his pants and he urinated, and kind of like 3 feet to show. This is in front of a bunch of top. Could you picture this? To show that before he couldn't urinate, he probably had prostate problems. Who knows? But the point being that he claimed to be invigorated, but here's the point: he didn't know what was in the monkey testicles. Mm-hmm. And this is the really pathetic part about it all. Years later, somebody analyzed his whole technique. It turns out that he wasn't even getting any testosterone. There wasn't any. Somehow the way he processed it, or I don't remember why, but it wasn't from testosterone. It was a placebo effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's how powerful the placebo effect is. He really believed that. Yeah. But the actual, as you point out, the actual testosterone discovery, I believe it was extracted originally from bull testicles around 1934, I believe it was. And it was actually 3 different scientists. I think 2 of them were in Germany.
Yeah.
Wald or something was one of them. I can't remember his name. But they all were doing work at the same time. And they kind of, all of the research put together, it turned out they finally isolated testosterone. In fact, the first anabolic steroid, a lot of people think it was testosterone. And it was in a way. But the very first anabolic steroid was produced, testosterone was produced synthetically in 1935, but actually I should say it was extracted in 1935. But the actual first synthetic anabolic steroid, a lot of people don't know this, was methyl testosterone, and that came in 1934. So that was actually the first steroid. And methyl testosterone, it caused problems. It could be used orally because of the methyl group. Normally, when you take testosterone itself orally, the liver will degrade it in about 25 minutes. It has very little activity. But by adding what they call a methyl group, the methyl group protects testosterone. Mm-hmm. The problem is it also makes it liver toxic.
Exactly.
So methyl testosterone never really caught on. Although it's still around today. In fact, I've seen it. They've actually had pro-hormone supplements that are touted to boost testosterone. And when they're analyzed, they actually contain testosterone, which is not good because that's bad for your liver.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I've read the medical journals from the late 1930s and early 1940s, and you see, I forget the name. I think it was called Methandrex and other products marketed with these names. Methandrex, I think it was.
Right.
And these were the first methyl testosterone
yeah.
Products that were sold as oral
Right.
and also injectable.
You know what's interesting, Carlos? The first medical indication, the very first medical indication of testosterone was not for muscles,
Yeah.
not for anything. You know what it was? Depression.
Depression, correct.
The first use of testosterone was to treat depression around 1941.
Mhm.
That was the first. They didn't realize that testosterone was really anabolic for muscles until 10 years later, 1951. That's when they realized testosterone could promote muscle growth. And for years, various sports organizations and medical organizations, they poo-pooed testosterone. They said, and anabolic steroids in general. Anabolic steroids started to be getting developed in the 50s. But all these medical authorities, they would write, testosterone does not increase muscle size. It only causes water retention. And, you know, by that time, the bodybuilders and athletes were using steroids. They were noticing the muscle growth and all that. And they knew it was more than just water. They were laughing at these doctors. And sure enough, the turning point came with a study, I believe it was 1997, where they showed that 600 milligrams of testosterone, I forget whether it's a week or a month, maybe it was a week, probably a week, had a definite effect on causing muscle hypertrophy to the extent where they had groups of men. Some of them were engaged in weight training, some of them were not. The guys who engaged in weight training and took the testosterone made the greatest gains in muscle size. However, this surprised the researchers. They didn't expect this. Even the men that didn't do any weight training still gained muscle size.
Yeah,
They took
exactly.
That's how potent it is.
Yeah. On testosterone and its trickle into the iron game. You mentioned that around in the 1950s, it actually finally became known in medical research that it had an anabolic property. The first bodybuilders to actually use testosterone, I think, from what I've read at least, were the York group. Is that correct? Like John Grimmick?
Absolutely true. What happened was there was a physician, oh God, I can't remember his name. It's right at the tip of my tongue.
Dr. Ziegler.
Ziegler, there you go. John Ziegler, very good. Dr. John Ziegler was a physician in Maryland who, strangely enough, many, many years later, Mike Menser worked in his office with him.
I was going to get to that.
Mike wanted to be a doctor originally, just like me. He wanted to be an MD, and he kind of, back then to get into medical school, you had to do like extracurricular work, like working in emergency rooms, a volunteer, this kind of stuff. So Mike worked in the office of John Ziegler. But getting back to Ziegler, Ziegler was like to lift weights, and he one year he went to the Olympics, and he was talking to a Russian coach. There, this was around 1954. Yeah,
correct.
And he's talking to this Russian coach, and we're talking about various, what are your training, what do you like to do with your athletes? Ziegler asked him, and this and that. And the Russian coach casually mentioned about, we give them testosterone injections. And Ziegler had never heard of that. Remember, they didn't realize testosterone was anabolic not until 1951. This is right after testosterone. Nobody really knew how anabolic it was. So Ziegler got the idea, he didn't want to give straight testosterone. So what he did is he went back and he kind of collaborated with a company called Ciba Pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of publications say that Ziegler developed Dianabol or methandrostenolone as the generic name. The trade name was Dianabol. He didn't develop it. But what he did is he worked with, or kind of gave the idea of manipulating the testosterone molecule to emphasize the anabolic effects and decrease the androgenic effects. Most of the side effects related to testosterone are called androgenic side effects. Acne, male pattern baldness, these are some of them. Prostate problems, possibly. And, what you want to do ideally with an anabolic steroid drug is emphasize the anabolic. That's the muscle building, bone building. Those are the beneficial effects. But you want to minimize androgenic effects. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but the holy grail for steroid researchers has been to develop a 100% anabolic drug, meaning no androgenic effects. That has never been accomplished for the simple reason that you have to have a little bit of androgenic effects for the anabolic steroid to work.
Yeah.
If you knock out all the androgenic effects, it doesn't really work as well. So you have to leave in some. Now, the way steroids were developed, some are more anabolic than others, and most anabolic steroids, meaning oral or injectable, are always usually much more anabolic than testosterone itself. Now, so basically, anabolic steroids are synthetic analogs of testosterone. They are structurally manipulated. Remember, I talked about how testosterone is broken down in the liver very rapidly. Oral anabolic steroids are structurally manipulated to resist the initial breakdown in the liver, and that's what causes the problems with oral steroids, because they can accumulate, especially if you take, like the bodybuilders taking high dose oral steroids, they can accumulate in the liver, and when that happens, the liver swells. It's caused a chemical hepatitis, is what it's called. Hepatitis is a general term meaning swelling of the liver. Liver inflammation. You have these kind of little channels. The liver produces bile from cholesterol, and it's transported through the liver in these little channels to the gallbladder where the bile is stored. But when the liver swells from the steroid use, it's like, you know how those truckers block the highways now? This is basically,
the ducts are blocked.
Yeah, what happens is the swelling of the liver blocks the bile channels, and what happens is the bile builds up and starts to damage the liver cells. They call that medically, it's called cholestasis. There are treatments for that, but it happens even with the benign, so-called benign oral steroids, like the ones people consider, safe, like Anavar. It has another name now, I forgot the name, but Anavar, Winstrol, these are considered safe oral steroids. Even they, if you take them in a large quantities, they will cause what I just described. In low quantities, they're less likely, but in larger quantities, they do. Now, another myth, while I'm on the subject, this is a widespread myth. Oral steroids can be dangerous for your liver, they'll say, right? But not injectables. They bypass the liver, so they don't hurt the liver. These idiots don't realize everything winds up in the liver sooner or later. In other words, the injectables will eventually get in the liver, and if you take enough of them, they will harm the liver just like oral steroids. Yes, they do initially bypass the liver, and yes, initially they are less dangerous to the liver because they don't accumulate like the oral steroid, but they still will wind up in the liver. You take a huge, like this idiot I got in a debate a couple of years ago, some 20-year-old kid was going online telling people to take as much decadurabolin as they want, which is an oral steroid. It can't hurt you. It's harmless, no matter. And I said, and he used that argument. It doesn't accumulate the liver, and it can't hurt you. I said, you're a moron. And I got mad because you have to understand he's a 22-year-old kid, and other kids his age believed him.
Yeah, of course they believe
their peers. They say, well, I'm going to listen to him. I'm not going to listen to this old guy Jerry, but I'm going to listen to him because he's my age. So they listen to this guy and they kill themselves or they hurt themselves. So I got mad at the guy and I said, you're a moron. And I produced 5 studies to prove I was right that injectables can harm the liver. And just like the anti-vax, he dismissed it. Hey, it's fake. I know it doesn't because I've been using 2,000 milligrams a day myself. Anyway, this guy sooner. Here's the end of the story. He disappeared. Never heard again. So I'll leave it up to the imagination of people watching what happened to this guy who was using 2,000 milligrams a day of testosterone for extent. Yeah. But getting back to the history of testosterone, I got off track. What were we talking about? You asked me a question.
So it was basically if the first athletes really in the States were the York team.
Yeah, I was talking about Ziegler. Okay, so Ziegler's meeting with this Russian coach, and the Russian coach, again mentions testosterone. Ziegler goes back. SEMA Pharmaceuticals, he kind of acts as an advisor. That steroid chemists at SEMA developed Dianabol, not John Ziegler. He's often credited. He did not develop it. SEMA chemists did. And Dianabol, but of course, they gave Ziegler access to the earliest Dianabol, which is in the 50s. This was I'd say about 55, maybe 56.
Yeah, 55, 56.
And Ziegler worked, as you pointed out, with the York Barbell Club, which Bob Hoffman was, York Barbell Company, blah, blah. They had a gym in York, Pennsylvania. And Ziegler went there, and he got a group of the Olympic weightlifters, not bodybuilders, Olympic weightlifters, and he told them to try this. One of them was Bill Marsh. Another guy's name was I can't remember, but oh God, I wish I knew this guy's name. But to make a long story short, Ziegler, being a physician, was very conscious of not overdosing. He didn't know a lot about, this was new to him, anabolic steroids. So he was very conservative. Since the amount of, SIBA told him that the prescribed amount would be 2 tablets a day, which is 10 milligrams. So Ziegler got these weightlifters together and said, look, I'm going to give you this new experimental drug. And, you know, I want to see how it affects see if it increases your weightlifting totals, if you get stronger. But I don't want any of you guys taking more than 2 tablets a day. Absolutely, do not exceed 2 tablets a day. Well, they listened to him. And sure enough, Bill March and this other guy whose name I can't remember, he was from New Orleans. Within a short time, they set personal weightlifting records. Yeah. Their strength went through the roof, right? And you know how it is when, the old saying, if 1 is good, 3 and 4 are even better. Yeah. The weightlifters figured, well, I'm getting this strong on 2 tablets. I'm going to take 4, 5, 6, 10 tablets. Ziegler found out about it and was absolutely disgusted and washed his hands. He became an anti-steroid advocate. Later on, he went 360 degrees, became anti-steroid to the point where one of his, I don't know how to, if you want to call it student, he mentored a guy named Bob Goldman, who's around today, who's vehemently, Bob's a doctor of osteopath. He's vehemently against steroid use. He's written a book called Death in the Locker Room, which talks about all the problems with steroid. Ziegler taught Bob Goldman about the dangers of steroids, so it completely turned around. So you can say that it's accurate to say that the first, let's say, athletic use by Americans was the Olympic weightlifters from Ziegler in York. Now, a lot of times, this goes back to the Golden Age stuff, you will see online, this is another argument I've got into with people, where they'll look at pictures of 1940s bodybuilding. They'll read that testosterone was originally discovered, let's say, in 1935, and they'll read that, well, it was used for depression in men in 1941, and then they'll scratch it. Well, let's see, you had bodybuilders in those days. Reg Park was around in the late 40s. John Grimmick was Mr. American 40 and 41, and then you got Steve Reeves. Oh, wait a minute, these guys all use steroids.
Yeah, they put 1 and 1 together.
Yeah, they'll write on these forums and these groups. Oh, Reg Park, yeah, he was a big guy. Yeah, he could bench press 5, but he was on steroids. Steve Reeves, you kidding? He could never get that physique without steroids. Of course he was on steroids. None of these guys were on steroids because even though testosterone was around in those days, it wasn't known to be anabolic until 51. So why would the bodybuilders take testosterone, even if they could have it? And it wasn't available to them unless they took it for depression. And to my knowledge, nobody did. Now, here's an interesting thing. John Grimmick was working for Bob Hoffman with his bodybuilding magazines, Strength and Health, and
muscular development.
Yeah, that didn't come till 64 though. But anyway, John Grimmick decided, Ziegler approached John Grimmick, considered one of the all-time great bodybuilders. Only went to win the Mr. America, twice, as I said. He beat Steve Reeves for Mr. Universe and this and that. But, Ziegler explained to Grimmick how the drug worked, and Grimmick was an intelligent guy. He says, I'll give it a shot. So, but he followed Ziegler's advice. Unlike the weightlifters, he stuck to 2 tablets a day. And he wrote later on that he used it for 3 months. And he says, honestly, I felt nothing. Yeah. No gains, no strength, nothing. So Grimmick believed that steroids don't work. But the truth of the matter is, a guy with his muscle mass taking 2 Dianabol, I'm not saying it wouldn't do anything, but it wouldn't cause any dramatic changes in a guy like John Grimmick. So of course it didn't work for him. It's to be expected. A guy like him would have to take maybe 20 milligrams to really notice anything. So, that's what happened there. But he wrote that steroids don't work. They didn't do anything to me.
That's really interesting. And mind you, he did it, of course, during his retirement.
That's right. He was already retired for many years.
Yeah.
This didn't happen until what, this late 50s maybe? Or 60s? And he stopped competing. What was the last contest? At 48?
Exactly. the universe.
Yeah, he had long retired.
So as we have heard from Jerry, the history of steroids dates back to the late 1800s with Professor Brown-Séquard's experimental extracts from the testicles of animals, the eventual synthesis of testosterone and its variants in the mid-1930s by German scientists, and its initial prescription by medical doctors as a drug for depression in the 1940s. I have actually talked about this particular theme in the past in my review of the book titled The Male Hormone, written in 1945, which many people claimed to be the source of how bodybuilders mysteriously or mystically found out about the muscle building powers of testosterone, which is absolute BS. You can watch that video, but in essence, if you want a summary, the book describes the ability of testosterone to help men that were castrated in war or who were born hypogonadic. I've read the book, and therefore testosterone, believe it or not, was associated with being unmanly. And so no self-respecting bodybuilder would touch that stuff, let alone know about its potential in building muscle. Jerry goes on to describe how it was only in the 1950s where bodybuilders eventually found out about testosterone and its ability to increase muscle mass after the Eastern Europeans had begun using it on their Olympic weightlifting athletes, specifically the Russian athletes, after which then the West finally caught up. Bob Hoffman's York team was the first set of weightlifting athletes in America and in the West to ever experiment with steroids. And later, Dr. Ziegler, who began to work with SIBA, helped with the development of a more potent drug than testosterone, and Dianabol was born. Although most people today point the finger at Dr. Ziegler, most don't know that he was rather conservative in his recommendation on the use of steroids, but unfortunately it was Bob Hoffman and the York team that actually decided to overdose and began to abuse steroids. Ziegler would later regret his decision to share his knowledge of steroids as a performance-enhancing drug, as he saw bodybuilders, weightlifters, and athletes, and even young students at high school use and abuse steroids in the 1970s. Jerry also slams the critics who claim that Reg Park, Steve Reeves, and other Silver Era athletes used performance-enhancing drugs. And of course, anyone that knows the history of steroids and doesn't rely on chat forums will know that Silver Era bodybuilders were not on steroids. These physiques are definitely achievable naturally, and if you don't believe me, just look at Alex from Alpha Destiny or Axel from Hersoviak on YouTube and you will quickly realize that getting big naturally is possible. But it takes years, and I'm talking more like 10 years of consistent hard training on compound lifts, balls to the wall training, to earn an appreciable amount of muscle on your frame, and it is not an easy thing to do. Anyway, I do hope you have enjoyed this interview with Jerry Brainum on the history of steroids, and if you have, please give the video a like, subscribe to this channel and Jerry's channel too for more content like this, and click the bell button to be notified of future videos, and don't forget to leave your comments in the comments section. Also, make sure to subscribe to Applied Metabolics newsletter by Jerry Brainum if you wish to enhance your knowledge on bodybuilding nutrition, especially as a natural bodybuilder. More information is given in the description below. If you're interested in learning more about natural bodybuilding, hit me up for online coaching at my website, and also check my website for ebooks on Golden Era and Silver Era training. That's it from me. This is the Golden Era Bookworm saying bye for now.
Online training is now available, including my new program, Novice to Classic, a program geared towards beginners and novices looking at developing a classic physique, as well as Classic Cut, geared at those who wish to lose weight and gain muscle fast. Details available at www.goldenerabookworm.com. Need a bodybuilding poster for your gym or office? Then check out Ironman Magazine archive.smugmug.com for the highest quality posters on the planet. Scroll through the galleries of all the legends, including greats such as Arnold, Frank Zane, Sergio Oliva, Serge Nubret, Tom Platz, and Larry Scott, and much, much more, and select your poster now. As a natural bodybuilder, it is imperative to know your own testosterone levels, as they are a reflection of the anabolic environment created by your diet and training. I would highly recommend using the male hormone test kit from Let's Get Checked, and make sure you use my code GOLDEN30 for a 30% discount. Again, the advantage of checking yourself regularly is that you will know how well your body is anabolically primed to put on the much desired muscle you are working for. Get your gym wear and Golden Era apparel at the new Golden Era Tees shop, featuring designs from the Silver Era and Golden Era legends, available as tanks, shirts, sweatshirts, and hoodies in all sizes and colors. To support your favorite YouTube channel, please visit teespring.com/stores/Golden Era Bookworm for merchandise including t-shirts, hoodies, face masks, phone cases, and much, much more. Once again at teespring.com/stores/Golden Era Bookworm. Become a patron at www.patreon.com/Golden Era Bookworm for hard to find books, scans of rare photos, and articles on the Golden Era of bodybuilding.
I don't think that Bill Phillips looked at it as, I want to compete against them. I want to destroy them.
If they pass legislation basically making any type of food supplement a prescription item, that would be the end, the death of the entire food supplement industry.
Take your vitamin pill now.
In the 1960s, the sports supplement industry was barely emerging.
I think the reason why Joe Weider was so successful was he had Arnold on his side.
He wasn't selling supplements. He was in the dream business.
Joe Weider was a marketing genius.
People would say the promotions or the endorsements back then were cheesy. To me, it wasn't. I loved it.
Fitness was taking off. You know, fitness became cool. You had a lot of readers that wanted to be like the stars that they idolized.
Bill's strength is his marketing savvy. He's a marketing genius.
Got it. It's only vitamin.
The right of American citizens to have free access to dietary supplements of their choice.
Consult your physician. You might as well consult the next guy you meet on the street. They don't know a damn thing about vitamins and nutrition.
The dietary supplement industry became the #2 most regulated industry. Nuclear, dietary supplements, pharmaceutical. We're more regulated than drugs.
They come in and you need to allow the FDA. They have jurisdiction.
The enforcement is kind of the questionable side of it, and how do they really get a handle on this monster?
A lot of people tell me that the dietary supplement industry is completely unregulated. It's the wild, wild west out there. It's a free-for-all. That could not be further from the truth.
A dietary supplement is not allowed to have a side effect. I always say that pharmaceutical has to have a minimum of 100 side effects in order for it to be a drug.
And now, it's a $40 billion industry and growing.
That's the really interesting thing, is the cast of characters from the 80s, when it was kind of iffy, to now when it's a lot more legitimate.
They made it sound cutting edge, revolutionary, and different, and I want that. That's cool.
We are in this industry to improve our health. It's not just a vanity project here. We're working on our lifeline. We eat a certain way to improve our health. We train a certain way to improve our health. Supplements are just that. They supplement your work, your graft, your nutrition.
They demonize dietary supplements, but they say all you need is real food. Well, what's a real food?
They pump you up and get you hard, stronger, faster, bigger.
Doc, I want to take this weight gain. I want to take this pre-workout. Doctor's, no way. That stuff, we don't know what's in that. It could be, no way. I'm not going to give you, it's going to kill the industry, bottom line.
So I must have drank so much protein powder from age 15 to 18 that my head was going to explode.
I believed in metrics so much that I would probably punch somebody in the face if they tried to take it away from me.